I'm Briegel, and I'm the current moderator for the Cherokee County, Georgia Assembly of the Republic for the United States of America. So what is that? What does that mean? What value is that? We're going to talk about it. We're going to break that down. But the first thing I would like to do before we get into any of that is pledge allegiance to the flag. So if I could have everybody stand up. And I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. So there's two things in that pledge that I want to point out. One is the republic. We're going to talk about that. And secondly is one nation under God. So because God is everything to us, I would like to ask if somebody would do a prayer for our meeting. So Corey, would you like to do that first?
Most kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for giving us the health and the ability to be here, Lord. We ask that you just bless this meeting and bless Dr. Lou, Lord, and what he stands for. And we owe it all to you. It's in Jesus' precious name we pray.
Amen.
Thank you. Amen. So, one nation under God, what is that? Well, we have to have a lot of history. We have to understand the republic and one nation under God, what that means. And so, you're going to hear a lot of history today that maybe is different because we have not had the full history of what the United States is all about. Certain things we do know, but we're going to go into historical facts, and whether you believe this or not, you can do research and find out for yourself that it's all factual. But when we hear something that's contrary, if you will, to what we've always believed or been led to believe, it's a little bit challenging for us to just accept it. So we have to mull it over, we have to think about it a little bit, get the information so you can feel good about it. So having said that, we need to go back a little before the founding of our country. Obviously, we had people move over here from Europe. They were pilgrims is how we refer to them mostly. And what they did was that they established the government here kind of underneath God because they were here because they were so persecuted where they were. And it all started in England with King James. And King James, created the King James Bible. He changed some things to fit his needs within that. I'm not saying it's not a good Bible. What I'm saying is that he had Christianity all under the state. So it was all documented people that didn't follow in his way and read the Bible on their own, were persecuted, they were killed, and so forth. So that led to them moving around Europe, finding a place. They eventually came here to the United States. And so everything they did was done through prayer. They prayed to God, continually asked God for his blessings. And we need to understand that that's kind of the foundation of our country. It's a Christian nation. Okay? Now, when we move on from that, then we had the Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War, the point of that was to dissociate from the tyranny that still followed them here, because England came over and claimed we own all this, so we were still under the British rule, and that did not set well with everybody, which led to the Revolutionary War. And the Revolutionary War was stimulated first by the Declaration of Independence, okay? And within the Declaration of Independence, it says that we are one nation. How does it go? We are endowed. Goodness, I gotta read this. Sometimes my brain just doesn't work. Don't say anything about that, Doc.
We have our creator with certain unalienable rights.
Yes, we hold these, thank you so much, Ben. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So when we start looking at that, we have to say, okay, everything is done via the Creator, so we are one nation under God, and that we all have certain rights. And so we went through the Revolutionary War with that, and then 6, 7, 8 years later, we came up with the Constitution. And what are the first 3 words of the Constitution? We the people. Okay, we the people. And within the Declaration, it said that we create governments, we the people create governments to govern our affairs based on our consent. Okay? And so the Constitution was that creation to govern us based on our consent. And what happened, also we had the Bill of Rights, which was attached to that, the first 10 amendments. And so those rights were not rights that were granted to us by the Constitution. They were just in the Constitution itself as reaffirming the rights that were God-given, the unalienable rights. So they were given to us from God. So we start looking at that, and for Christians, there's something called the Trinity, which is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And I find it interesting because the Declaration in and of itself doesn't do it. The Constitution in and of itself doesn't do it. The Bill of Rights doesn't do it. But all 3 of those is like the Trinity of the United States here. It's also important to understand that when the Constitution was written, it was based on biblical practices, biblical standards. In fact, over 30% of everything written in the Constitution came directly out of the Bible, mostly in the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy. So it's important that we establish that. That has to be a focal point of everything that we do from here on out. So that's the way things started, and it worked well. Now what happened is that England still wanted to keep their claws into us, specifically the banking industry. They wanted to have control, because he who controls money controls everything. Okay, that's how the bankers thought about things. And so as we start going through the history, one of the interesting things is that President Andrew Jackson was very much opposed to that, as far as the bankers coming in. And it's interesting reading a little bit about him, is that because he was defiant of the bankers, that somebody showed up with a pistol, and it was a dry day. It should not have had anything happen, but boom, he was shot at. The gun misfired. So he pulls another pistol out, boom, that gun misfired. So Andrew Jackson has a cane. He starts beating the guy with the cane. So it's kind of funny stuff. You can read more about it. This art of history is just amazing. And so what happened is that every president that tried to pull things back to and keep it on base away from the bankers, they had stops all along the way, all along the way. Some of them were poisoned. So now we come to the Civil War. And the Civil War was, we're told about slavery. And I'm not saying that it wasn't, but you need to understand what happened. It's the bankers. They're the ones who actually created the war, because they wanted to have the battle. They wanted to have that war. They wanted to divide the country. They wanted the division and divisiveness. And for any of you who are religious, understand that the division and divisiveness of everything comes from what? The devil, okay, the evil, okay? So that's what was happening. And so they found that they were able to take and get people all riled up for and against slavery. Now we go back to the republic, okay, which our country is. It's a constitutional republic. We're not a democracy. What does everybody tell us we are today? We're a democracy. So if you don't understand the difference between democracy and the republic, you're kind of missing the point, okay, the focal point that we need to stay on. So a democracy, I'm just going to cut to the chase and say it's like mob rule. What I mean by that, it's 50% plus 1. So if we take 10 people and we're divided 5 and 5, then we can't move forward. But if we have 11 people, we can divide and see. And so wherever the one flips to, whatever side they're on, that's the side that rules everything. So that's why I refer to it as mob rule, because people can get all riled up about an issue. I mean, just look at everything going on in the world right now. People are riled up about all kinds of issues that are creating division and divisiveness. And we are united, one nation under God. So we have to ask, why is all this happening? A republic is where we, the people, vote on representatives to go and do our bidding and wishes in the Congress, okay, in our government. And here's the thing about a republic, which can be also considered a democracy, because we, the people, when we vote on the representatives, now they have the power. We don't have the sovereignty and the power. Now the representatives have the power. So what our development of our Constitution and our government was, it's a constitutional republic. The Constitution is there as a law that contains what those representatives do. So we still have the power. We still are governed by the consent. We can vote for these people, but those people, if they don't do our bidding, they're removed, okay? They don't have the authority. We still have the authority. Not as just a republic, but the constitutional republic. So now moving back forward to the Civil War, okay? I'm going to suggest that the evil, conniving, divisive, unprincipled men, I'll just say, created this war, and they were able to get the people all up in arms, kind of like a democratic thing. Well, we believe in slavery. We don't believe in slavery. And so what happens is that we go to war. And the Southern, what our history tells us, is that the Southern states seceded from the Union. We've all heard that, right? That's not correct, because when member states become part of the United States, it's a permanent thing, it's a forever thing. They can't secede, they can't remove themselves. But what they did is that they just didn't send their representatives and senators to the federal Congress. And by doing that, now Congress did not have a quorum to do business. So now we have to go back to the Constitution, because Abraham Lincoln is president, the Congress wasn't there, the legislative body couldn't function. So thankfully the Constitution in Article 4, Section 4, it says that if the Congress cannot meet to legislate, then it flips to the executive branch. So the president has the control to run the country. That's what Lincoln did throughout his tenure of his first office. The Civil War was over, and he ran again. He got reelected, and now, guess what? He wanted to put that government back under the way it was, because now the Senate and the Congress was starting to come back in sessions. Okay, so now he had a quorum. So here's what happened in the dark of night, if you will. Wasn't told to us. We didn't give our consent to anything, but the unprincipled bankers, if you will, they liked having it kind of run by the executive branch. So what they did is they took our Constitution and they came and made a mirror image of it, if you will, and brought it over here. And so what happened is that and they made it a corporation. So they made the corporation of the United States. And this corporation of the United States, as people started coming back to fill the Congress, and the ones that were still here were shifted over to here. So everybody was moving into here, but nobody knew that that's what was happening. So ever since 1871, we have now been under the corporate structure of the federal government. And a corporation, as we all understand, the top rules everything, okay? And so that's the problem. And we understand this Constitution. We've been led to believe that we are still under this Constitution, but you look and see, well, I have constitutional rights. People who have fought the government, I don't care what taxes or anything, they fight the government based on constitutional issues. They go into court, and guess what? They lose. Because this doesn't have authority to come in to here, because this is basically null and void as far as this government is concerned. that make sense? Okay. So that led all kinds of things to happen. This corporation had all the states become corporations. All of the different, like the FBI, the CIA, IRS, all of these federal things were all individual corporations, some of them within the corporate structure here. Some of them, like the IRS, Federal Reserve, they're totally private corporations, have nothing to do with even the corporate structure here. So now, we say, okay, now we understand why we're in such a pickle, okay? And so there were other presidents that understood that, okay? And so they wanted to pull things back, put everybody back to this Constitution. So I'm gonna just suggest that anybody as a president that was assassinated wanted to take this and put it back over here. They wanted to reestablish the constitutional republic. So William McKinley, I think, was one, kind of like the turn of the century, 1900. And JFK. Most of us are aware that JFK was assassinated. Well, he was totally, I'm going to say, a white hat, okay? He totally understood what happened here, and he wanted to resolve this, if you will, put things back here. Basically, the Constitution says that we can have, for our monetary things, gold and silver, and we can have, notes with gold that's backed by gold and silver. We can't print money, just phony money, which is what the Federal Reserve does. It's not even a part of this corporation. So the money is controlled by something outside of even the corporate structure in our United States. So let's go back and look to see. There were also people in the military, and I'm just going to refer to the groups now as white hats and black hats, okay? The white hats understood this and they understood this, and they wanted to find a way to put it back here. And everything that they were looking at, however they were doing it, once Kennedy was assassinated, they really started to come together and let's diligently work on making a plan to this work. And so what happened is they were going through and looking, how can we make this work? They were having issues trying to figure it out. And every way they looked, they thought, there's just going to be civil war, there's going to be mass chaos, there's going to be all kinds of things, and it's just not going to work. So they've been frustrated with trying to move this forward. And, but they've been diligently working since Kennedy was assassinated. So let's move up to a couple of years now. And there was a gentleman by the name of James Timothy Turner, and he had a radio station, talk show, had hundreds of thousands of listeners. He also toured the country, and he was teaching Constitution, the legality of the Constitution, and what it meant, and so forth. And so he was getting quite a following throughout the country. And so he also had some people that were acquaintances of his that were in the military, in the white hat section of the military. And so one of these gentlemen, I don't know if it was a colonel or a general, but high up, came and asked Turner, says, you've been teaching the Constitution, you've got a big following, can you help us with this issue? We need to find some way to get rid of this and move everything back to here. And so Turner, being highly religious and spiritual, he's from Alabama, by the way, he still lives there, but he went up into the mountains, into a cabin, and he prayed and fasted for 3 days. At the end of the 3 days, he, as dusk was setting, he picks up a pad of paper and a pen, and he just starts writing. And he kept writing all through the night. Now daybreak is coming, dawn is breaking, and he just sets his pen down. 17 pages he wrote that whole time. And so he's looking at it, and so he met with his acquaintance in the military and gave it to him, and the guy's looking at it and says, I'm going to take this back to some of my other colleagues, and I'll get back to you. So I don't know how long, a couple of days later, he meets with Turner again, and he says, "Where did you get this?" Turner says, "It's not me." He says, "It's download from God. God gave that to me to give to you." So he says, "This is amazing. I think this will actually work." And so then they enlisted Turner within the plan, God's plan to restore the republic. And so he started working on things to do. And so here's what he totally discovered in all of his constitutional reading and studying, researching. And after this came from God, that's when they realized that this corporate structure, even though it's legal, it's not legal based on this, because this still stands. This Constitution was never told to us that they're disbanding it and putting it over here. So it's still like a book, a dusty book, if you will, in the library, nobody's read for a long time. And so what he realized is what we need to do. We don't have to go to war and battle this. You know, what we need to do is re-inhabit this. So we just need to start putting people back into it. And there's certain legal things to do to take place to make that work. So with his following, hundreds of thousands of people, he got to work and started working on this. Now I need to do one other insert so that when I get to what happened with this, it makes sense. Because this is truly God's plan and it came from God. So in, I think it was 1989, George H. Bush, Papa Bush, he actually, he was part of this. So he created suzerainty is what it's called. And basically through executive orders, he did a treaty with the UN, basically saying if we don't have this by April 1st of 2010, then the UN is going to have complete total control over any times of unrest, and they can come in and take over our whole government. We don't have any rights, nothing, okay? So, April 1st of 2010. So in 2008 is when Turner and the military, they had this discussion, we wrote this thing, and so they had basically a year and a half to 2 years to get this done. So Turner got everything formulated, got this stuff together. Within 10 months, they got all the states, all the legal stuff that they had to do, the documentation and everything. The whole state and the whole union of states was all re-inhabited. They got the documents sent to all, you know, the Supreme Court, every place they had to do. March 31st, guess what year? 2010. The day before we would have lost everything. So tell me that God didn't have a hand in that. So then what happened, there was a couple things along the way. Now, Turner was approached by somebody from the government, and offered $5 billion, that's a B, not an M, $5 billion if he would just step away from this and go live his life peacefully wherever he wants to go. And he said, well, that's a lot of money. And he says, yeah, take it. And he says, I can't take it because this was given to me through God, from God, to give to the country. So I can't go against my God. So he refused. The next thing, I think there was about 6 of them that I'm aware of, but there were different assassination attempts based on his, excuse me 1 second, based on his still doing things. And it's really interesting to hear all those stories about how they took place. You would totally believe that God is in control and God wanted him to continue on with his mission. So then it comes into...
I'm sorry.
So then it comes into, we've got this all built up, and one of the things that needed to go forward is that in order to have worldwide recognition, we had to put things in The Hague and Universal Postal Service, we had to go to different organizations, world organizations. And so they took did all the documents, all the legal stuff, and everything to go to. So this.
I tell you what, you video him and I'm going to take this call.
So they took, goodness. Sorry about this distraction. I'm talking about God, and the devil isn't too happy about that. What can I say? So anyway, what happened is that, going back to Turner, they were going to the world courts and all this kind of stuff, filing paperwork and so forth. And so they had actually 132 countries in the world acknowledge that this is the legitimate constitutional government of the Republic of the United States, not this corporate structure. So now Obama's in office during this time, and so Obama, we needed to have 2 more countries in the world. That would have been 134. That gives the UN the quorum so they could legally establish that this is the legitimate government of the United States. Just 2 more countries. Obama arrests Turner, okay? He's in jail for like about 10 years. He got out a couple of years ago, but he still is you can't talk about this kind of stuff. You can't go to the national, or can't go throughout the country and talk about this. So, so now let's go back. Obama has him arrested in 2012, and so now he's in jail, he's incarcerated, and so the Republic, the re-inhabited republic is now the people kind of like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? They're coming after him, they're going to come after us. So they got spooked like anybody, and they kind of quieted down. Well, one of the things that you have to do, even though all the paperwork, everything is there and established, there's certain legal requirements. You have to have a monthly meeting and have a quorum for that. So because that they scattered, it was like the Constitution when the legislature couldn't come and do things. So now it's kind of sitting on the shelf again. And so what's happened is that the military was really moving along, white hats. And so they came and talked to Trump. And they said, will you run for president? And Trump knew all this stuff. He knew all about this stuff. And he said, absolutely, I will. So he comes down the golden escalator, as they say, and he says, I'm running for president. Immediately that day, that time, the whole world loved Trump. And they just flipped like that. Now they hated Trump. Everything was against Trump. Because guess what? This was the power, and he was set to disrupt it. So Trump's sole mission, and you've heard him say, I'm going to drain the swamp. When he was inaugurated first in 2016 or 2017, he said, we're not transferring power back from one party to another. We're not transferring from one administration to another administration. We are transferring the power back to you, we the people. And his whole mission has been to methodically and strategically deconstruct this. And if you get news and get information from any place other than the mainstream news, that's over here, and you will see and realize that that's exactly what's going on. And of course, they are saying that Trump is bad, he's creating all these problems, he's doing all this stuff. But the people who know, who are in the know about things, and again, the focal point is God. God's in control of everything. So we have to have faith in God, that God does what he says. He's always done that. Everything in the Bible, he's always come through and done and honored what he says he's going to do. Unfortunately, we've seen those things in the Bible that he doesn't do it when we the people want it done, right? It's his time. We have to be patient. We have to have the faith. And so right now, that's what we're doing. So what we are doing is that we are now in the process of repopulating this, okay? Because when Trump and and the white hat military gets this totally deconstructed, what are they gonna do with it? They can't just put good people in this. This is a totally broken, corrupt system. It's just gonna be gone. And so Trump and the military can't do anything with this until they have this to be able to give it back to we the people. So it's vitally important, two things. One is that we get the message about this out. Every single person, you are either we the people or you're just, I'm fine being a slave to this. Because if we the people don't stand up, not through war and battle and fighting this, but we just have to come together as we the people. And it's based on the groundwork, okay? It's based on the groundwork of we the people, and it starts in the county. And we have to get involved in the county politics, if you will, the school boards, the city, county commission, the city governments, and so forth. We have to have our voice. That's where our control is. Because everything feeds from us up through the counties, through the states, and so forth. So what we need is people like you to go out and tell this story or have help telling this story. And there's a number of tools for that. One is, if you haven't had one of these, I'll give you one here. This talks a little bit, summary of what we just talked about. It also has a QR code on the back that you can go to, you can use the QR code and find out about what we in Cherokee County, that goes to our Facebook page. So we've got information about this there. We also have on that page and also here, we have a website that you can see the website. And the website shows us exactly to the national website that gets a lot of good information about what we're doing. This is actually the header on the national website. So anyway, hopefully that's giving you some information. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for being here. And so two things I'll leave you with is that we need the information to get out for people, and we also need the people that want to work to help do this, to spread it out to other people. So anyway, I bid you adieu. I thank you so much for being here, and we are a republic, constitutional republic, one nation under God. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.